Welcome, everyone, to It's Time to Excel, where we inspire and we ignite the possibilities, especially for the small business owner. This month has all been about time management. And for those that you joined the Lunch and Learn, thank you so very much for joining us. And hopefully, you got a few little tips and tricks about how to make sure your time is managed just as well as your money. I often talk about getting that budget put together for your money so that you can tell your money where it's going instead of wondering where it went. Some keywords that are often, I'm sure you've heard from other folks as well. But taking a look at that, you really want to know exactly where your money's going. Why is it not the same thing with your time? And I challenge to say this, it is. So once again, I want to welcome those that are joining us live here to It's Time to Excel, where, as I said, we inspire and ignite the possibilities because there's so many things out there that distract our time. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at getting distracted occasionally. If I really am just not in the quote unquote mood to get it done, I can always find something else that needs to be done. Anybody relate? I'm going to guess many of you can. And what I would love to encourage you today is to start thinking about how can we budget our time a little bit better. So in the prior weeks, we talked about a weekly plan sheet. Okay. So what in the world was that? That was simply our reminder that we take basically a piece of paper, calendar, whatever, and we actually go through and we prioritize our day. We set aside time because as business owners, we are juggling all kinds of hats. We've got to get the marketing in there. We've got to get the sales in there. And funny thing, we got to get the client work in there, as well as the family time, as well as taking care of the kids, making sure that there's food on the table in a lot of cases. And the list goes on and on and on. Too often, what ends up happening by the end of the day, the list got longer instead of shorter. And that's what we really want to sit down and focus on. So how can we take a step back and figure out what those priorities are? And this whole time as I've been talking and I'm saying we're going to juggle all of these different things, there's one thing that was missing. Did you catch it? We've got to make sure our businesses are up and running. So we've got sales calls to make. We've got financials we got to take care of. That's my big hitter. We got to make sure that we understand where that money's coming in and out of so that we can make good, educated decisions. Because the whole reason you're in business is so that you have profits. Well, you got to manage that. You've got to manage your money in order to make sure that you're working in the right directions. You've got to have a plan in place. You got to be able to throw those darts and you got to make sure that dartboard's in front of you, not behind you. So that's why you put all of these tools into place. Weekly plan was one of the ones that we talked about. Okay, we've got all that. Yes, we got to add, as a small business owner, we get to add our family in there as well. We got to take care of them, especially a lot of the family. You've got kids that are now virtually learning, maybe back in school. You're bouncing back and forth. There's pets that are involved. Sometimes there's vet runs. There's little arguments. There's little tiffs. They got to go outside if they're little, especially maybe more than expected. Little things like that are always constantly creeping up. And then, of course, there's the house. You got to maintain that. And you've got different things that got to be done there. And yes, dinner's got to be done too. And throughout all of that, you never took time for you. Too often, that is the case. Too often, as business owners, we are juggling so many things. We never take time for you, for me. What about that? How do we do that? But there's just not enough hours in a day. You need 25 hours to get it done. Not necessarily. How do we do this? How do we get it back? What do we need to do? Because here's what happens. When you start running so very, very hard, and I'll be honest, I had to learn the hard way. I absolutely had to learn the hard way. I was running so hard that I didn't realize how exhausted I was. I didn't realize until I ended up a little visit to the hospital. I had been running corporate for many, many hours. We had moved, all kinds of chaos. trying to take care of parents, and like the list went on. And I just dealt with it. Sound familiar? You just deal with it. The problem with that is if you deal with it consistently and you fail to take time for you, eventually your body's going to say enough. And that's exactly what happened to me. My body said enough, and I landed in the hospital. Not recommended. If you can avoid that one, I strongly suggest that you do. For me, it took a 2x4 upside the head to say, hey, wait a minute. And I'm saying that figuratively. I was so stressed out. I needed that break. My body shut down. And I think too many times that's what ends up happening. So I'm going to encourage you. And that's why we really want to talk about this. And time management is such a huge key to that. How do we do that? I suggested we started out by taking that weekly plan sheet and you budget out your time, just like you'd budget your money. You take it and you say, okay, there's so many hours in the day. Okay, last time I checked, that's 24. How many of those do you need to sleep? So we got to start prioritizing. Sleep is required. I don't know about you, and some people need more than others, but sleep is required. Without getting sleep, you can't recharge, and you cannot be the best for your clients. You can't be the best for your family. You can't be the best at what you're doing if you're exhausted. It just doesn't happen. So, all right. So whatever hours you need to sleep, if that's 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever that ends up being, okay, you take that off the top. Just like when we're talking about our money and we start thinking about the profit first mentality, that make sure you're getting a paycheck, make sure you're allocating for profits, make sure that you are planning for this stuff so that you're setting yourself up for success. The same thing holds true when it comes to taking care of you. You have got to set you up for success. And you can do that by starting to take a step back. Take a break. Start and seeing exactly what you need. We all have 24 hours. That's a given. That is the boundary we all get to play with. Guess what? Whether we like it or not, we are stuck within the 24-hour marker. So how do I leverage my time and make the best of it? Start it by going to this weekly plan. Okay, mark off your sleep time. This is time that you're going to shut down and you're going to go to sleep. That doesn't mean staying on Facebook. That means going to sleep. Get your chance to get there. But here's what I'm going to encourage you. Not only to that, and you're going to have to budget your client time. You're going to have to budget all these other little pieces in there. But I want you to take time and budget for you. And some of that involves your time going out onto Facebook, onto YouTube, onto different things. If that works for you and that gives you a little bit of downtime, by all means, schedule that in. Absolutely. But schedule it. And if you have to set a timer to cap it, then do it. We all take breaks in different ways. We all need breaks in different ways. Some are introverted, some are extroverted. What does that mean? Simply means, how do you recharge? Do you need to be around a lot of activity like an extrovert in order to recharge, quote unquote, your batteries? Or are you more of an introvert, which means I just need time to myself. I need peace and quiet. You've got to know, you. What is it that recharges your batteries? And you've got to start building those things into your day. It has to. In order for you to serve your clients and to excel at what you're doing, you have got to take time for you. What can you do? How do you do it? One of those things is you just got to make it a habit that you plan in your time for you, taking regular breaks. We all have busy schedules. We're all trying to juggle it all. Let's juggle it more effectively. And we can do that by starting to block off some time. Schedule time for you. Schedule time for these odds and ends, these little things. If you enjoy going for a walk, great. Maybe that encourages you to get up 5 minutes earlier and say, okay, maybe that's meditation time. Maybe it's 10 minutes. Maybe it's 15 minutes. You really got to start thinking about, how do you recharge? We talked about sleep. Now, what are the activities that recharge you? Is that a day out to the spa for some of the ladies? Is that an opportunity to say, I'm just going to go for a walk. I just want to be out and walk for a little bit. Well, how can I do that? How can I build that in? Is it quiet time and meditation time? I know I start my morning with usually some meditation time, and I start doing my prayer time and my journaling, and it allows me to refocus. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. You've got to get focused to accomplish. You got to know what direction you're going. Otherwise, your circles that you're running, because life will go a little crazy. We all know that. And what you had planned very rarely works. But if you start budgeting in this time block that you have it scheduled into your normal day, and it becomes a habit. How long does it take a habit? Different studies say different thing. I think the new average is it takes about 66 days to get there. It used to be, I think, 21 days. It's gone up a little bit because there's too many distractions. Whatever it is, start building yourself a habit. Maybe that habit is 15-minute breaks every couple hours. If you work an 8-hour day, schedule in 15-minute breaks. Something that I had to start doing a little bit more regular. I don't have a chance. I finally got myself scheduled in for a half an hour lunch break. Not sure about you, but as business owners, and I did this in corporate too, come back into some quote unquote bad habits where I just worked through my lunch. It was just sitting there. I started doing that again. What happened? My productivity wasn't quite where it needed to be. And then I'm like, okay. I started catching myself getting into the hamster wheel mentality. So what can you do? Well, one of the first things I did is I stepped back. And I started reevaluating. I'm like, no, wait a minute. I have a choice. I have a choice to make sure that this chaos doesn't continue. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to take a step back and start budgeting in time. So I started allocating out a half an hour every single day to step back, to eat away from the computer. Made a big difference. Makes a huge difference when you just step back. Did the time change each day? Of course it did, depending on what I had going on. But I made it a point to put it on the calendar. And then I treated that appointment with the respect that it needed. And I take that little bit of a break. And it's amazing how much more productive you become when you start building that in. A lot of times I work some long days. I'm going to guess as small business owners, you guys work some long days. It's part of the world. It's part of it. But how can you build in some of that? So one of the things that you can do is I started allocating out anywhere from basically 5 to 15 minutes occasionally throughout the day. Now, in my world, I've got puppies and dogs and 4-legged children. So I enjoy being outside. So one of the things that I've been able to do is by building in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's usually about all I'm doing, every couple of hours, all of us get to go outside. And I know that for the next 10 minutes, we're just going to be out here. We're just going to be chilling. So I can throw some balls. I can get out in the sun. I can walk through the grass. I can watch these crazy nuts of mine actually go running and playing and wearing off some energy. It's a win-win situation. For me, that works. Maybe it's taking a quick 5-minute walk just out the street and back. Maybe it's just walking away. If Facebook calms you down, go for it. Get a chance to do that. Take a step away from it. But sometimes you've got to find what recharges you. And you've got to take care of you in order to make sure it's going. So as I said, I've been doing this 5 to 10 minutes a couple times a day, built into my schedule. Sometimes it's not exactly what I planned, but you know what? That's okay because it's on my schedule. And as long as I maintain that, I'm starting now to get into a better habit. I'm calmer. The boys are calmer. Novel concept. I don't have the kids jumping up on my lap all the time trying to get into the Zoom calls because we are taking time out. We are getting their energy worn out. We are getting me feeling better because I've stepped back from the projects at hand so that I can better serve my clients. And that's what I want to encourage you to do as well. Figure out what works. Maybe it is a 15-minute break. Maybe it's a 5-minute break every couple hours, every hour, whatever it ends up being. You have to play with that a little bit. But whatever it is, walk away from the screen for a few minutes. Unplug. Another thing that's very important, I think, during the week is you've got to have a down day. A day where you don't touch the computer, where you don't get on the phones and all of that. Completely unplug if you can. Not everybody can, of course, do that. But get some downtime where you are not dealing with it and you're giving yourself a chance to breathe, to get out and enjoy what you want to do. It makes a huge difference. We all need to get the priorities structured and we all need to figure out what direction we're going in. But part of that is planning that out because, as we said, and we know, life is a little unpredictable. If you want something to be changing, welcome to life. And that's okay. You can still budget into those times. You can still actually plan your time to the best of your ability, knowing that it's going to adjust a little bit. And that's all right. That's all right. And by doing that, I know when I was in corporate, I used to go swim for a half an hour. I did actually it was water aerobics. And fortunately, I could pretty well tread water. So it just didn't wet the hair, and you made it work. But it was an opportunity for me to take a step back. And I did that twice a week. That little half an hour. So my lunch hour, half an hour was, I went over and I got in the pool for a little bit. And I felt so much better. And I was so much more energized because I was taking care of me. And at the same time, by default, I started taking care of others. I was able to get my work done more efficiently and more effectively because I cleared my mind too. Because when you take a break, a lot of times you can refocus. You can take a step back. I don't know if you've ever been, but when you're in the middle of the weeds, it can get a little crazy because you're just so focused and nothing is making sense. So if you get to a point where you're just starting to struggle, you're starting to make little mistakes, you're starting to really just get frustrated, that's a perfect time to say, okay, 5-minute break. Take a step away. Being in accounting for so long, so often I'd be chasing pennies because, as accountants tend to have that little retentiveness when it comes to a reconciliation, which means the numbers have to match. What went in has to come out. Why are they not matching? I need to figure this out. That's just a characteristic of us accountants. It is what it is. And that is one thing that when you just absolutely can't find it, how often, and for those that are accountants, I know you can relate to this one, step away. Step away, and sometimes just 5 minutes. Sometimes it's the next morning and you're in the shower and oh, that's what it was. It happens regularly because you've allowed your mind to take a step back. You've allowed your mind to break a minute so it could actually think. It'll actually do its job. That's why a lot of times overnight you end up waking up in the middle of the night thinking about these great ideas. So very often it's great to have a little notebook by the bedside because you're not going to remember them in the morning. But if that works for you a lot of times, and I do, I have a notebook there that if I get this really crazy idea that I'm like, oh, I really want to follow up on that, I can simply jot it down and go right back to sleep. And then in the morning, I can take a look at that and see kind of where I'm at. At least then I don't have to try to remember it. It's too much energy. I need to be resting. And that's what you need to do. You need to try to figure out how you can take time for you. And a lot of that is figuring out, using that weekly plan sheet, identifying what are your priorities, but make sure one of those priorities is you. Make sure that you have in that 3 to 6 list, that first 3 to 5, whatever number you're going to work on for that day, you take time for you. You can delegate a lot of things. You can't delegate taking time for you. In order to be the most effective and the most efficient and the most productive, figuring out what recharges you, what allows you to be energized and to be the best that you can be, make sure that's a top priority. Make sure that's built into your schedule. And then the rest of it's going to fall in place. So build that little time in, whether it's 15-minute breaks, whether it's 5 to 10-minute breaks, whatever it is, figure it out. As I said, I head outside with the boys. Gives me a chance, especially go out. Now, winter, we'll have to talk about that. But in the meantime, well, at least there's some sun out there and just enjoying the weather. It is a great opportunity to recharge. So we get outside, we play a little bit. Often it's very much 5 minutes. Gives me a chance to work with them a little bit more. We all come back in. Everybody's chilled. I can get back to work and I can be more effective while I'm doing that. It's built into the schedule. Take that little bit of time and then put some boundaries on your time. You are just as important as your work because you want to do the best that you can do. And the only way you can do that is by taking care of you. And it is okay once in a while to say no. Really, it is. It's okay. Because would it be better to say, no, I can't do that right now because I'm already prioritized here than to say yes and not be able to do it? Or be so stressed you don't do it the way you normally would, which is to the best of your ability? Is it worth it? Absolutely. There are some non-negotiables when it comes to your time. Part of them is you need to sleep. That's a guarantee. Every human needs to sleep. How much time? That's dependent on you. Then what can you do? You need to prioritize some me time, some family time. And taking care of you. That means healthy eating. That means getting the proper rest. That means taking the necessary breaks so that you can be the best that you can be and you can excel when it comes to servicing your clients. And that's what I really want to encourage you to do. Take this opportunity, actually take a few minutes each and every day to plan out the next day to the best of your ability. Is it going to mix it up occasionally? Of course. Will the day work as planned? No. That's a given. But when you have a plan in place, you have a direction that you're going, it's much easier to get back on track when things get really, really crazy. And after all, isn't that why you have your own business? So you have flexibility to work around things. Just make sure the flexibility is built in, that it also includes taking care of you. Thank you guys so very much for joining in. For those that are coming in live, it was great to have you. For those that are coming in and watching the replays, drop in your comments, because after all, it's so important and it's your time to excel. There's all kinds of possibilities out there. Find what works for you and take time for you. Thank you again, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you here next week as we continue kind of talking a little bit about time management. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.